Hi everyone, Lisa Haven here, and I've got a report to share with you guys today that is being completely ignored by the mainstream media, and I'm going to say yet again because they ignore a lot of stuff, but this time this one has what I'm going to call biblical ramifications. You see, because the Pope has just published his latest encyclical letter, and in this letter he is literally calling for seizing up this pandemic opportunity to usher in authoritarian New World Order globalization all across the globe. And when this man speaks, we really need to pay attention because he has some of the earmarks, if you will, to the false prophet, or at least he is a false prophet, one of many in the Bible. And this man has some eerie stuff that I'm about to show you that he laid out in this encyclical letter. But bottom line, we are going into uncharted territory, into scary times. And right now, the amount of dictatorship that's rising in our country is terrifying. Now, before I get into the report, I want to tell you guys I'm going to be at a rally in Phoenix, Arizona at the Capitol there. This rally is October 10th, this Saturday at 11 a.m. And I hope to see each and every single one of you there. So come out and join me. I'd love to meet you guys. And that's just kind of a patriotic rally supporting Red there, your Republican Party. So check us out there. Also this month, I'm going to be a part of 2 virtual conferences. The first one is Steve Quayle's conference. That's happening this month really soon. You can check out all the information in the description box below, but it is the final warning for America. What happens when we're removed from on air? And this is going to have Steve Quayle, myself, and many others. The second conference that I'll be at is Paul Begley's conference. And this conference happens, I believe, October 30th and 31st. And it's another virtual conference all about the deep state. So check it out in the description box below and get your tickets for either. All right. So what's going on with this Pope's encyclical letter that you need to know about, especially with the biblical ramifications? Well, let me take you straight to his letter, and this thing is fairly long, but I'm going to just kind of highlight some of the things that I think you need to know about. But his encyclical letter is titled Fratelli Tutti of the Holy Father Francis, and he kind of takes the theme of this entire letter of who he gathered his name from, Pope Francis, right? And in the overall theme of this thing is kind of like a hive mind mentality, as I'm going to call it, where he calls all of us, instead of being individuals, to be more of a community mindset, because that's the things that I believe the devil wants. He doesn't like individuality. I think we all need to be individuals, and there's things that we can come together on, but not the way I think that this is being broadcast in his letter. And it's almost as if he's calling for a hive mind. But again, he's anti-capitalism. And of course, he's pushing very hardcore the New World Order out of this chaos from the pandemic. But let me focus on a couple sections here. Here's section 7. So you can follow along with these as I go with them. But it says here, as I write this letter, the COVID-19 pandemic unexpectedly erupted, exposing our false securities. Aside from the different ways that various countries responded to the crisis, their inability to work together became quite evident. For all our hyperconnectivity, we witnessed the fragmentation that made it more difficult to resolve the problems that affect us all. Anyone who thinks that the only lesson to be learned was the need to improve what we already are doing or refine existing systems and regulations is denying reality. In other words, this pandemic brought up a lot of problems with the global community. And let me just pause because there has never been a point in time where you've just had peace on earth and every country getting along. And this is exactly what he's saying is possible. And it's not possible because we know, according to the Bible, that brings destruction and death, and the whole tribulation will break out when that actually happens. But in the meantime, here he is calling for it like it's a possibility. Look, we live in a sin-filled world. We're not going to have peace on earth till Jesus comes back. Let's just be honest. But he goes on to say that because of the pandemic, if you think only refining your existing setup and laws is enough, it's not. So in other words, what is the solution to this pandemic? What do we need to do? Well, he answers that in the report a little bit later. And let me show you. Section 132 reads, since the consequences of the decisions made by each inevitably have repercussions on the entire international community, as a result, our response can only be the fruit of a common effort. There's that hive mind. And he goes on to develop a form of global governance with regard to movements of migration. Now, here he's calling global government in regards to migration. In other words, open borders, open countries, and which is completely contradictory to what we're doing right now. But he says the answer to unification, the answer to the pandemic, open the borders, open migration, and let's start this global government. But he also expands, right? He goes on, section 172. The 21st century is witnessing a weakening of the power of nation states. Chiefly because the economic and financial sectors, being transnational, tend to prevail over the political. In other words, all of our nation states, our United States of America, Australia, all of us are falling apart because of this pandemic. Well, it's not because of the pandemic, let's be clear. It's because of what our tyrants and dictators have done at the top, and that is closing down and locking down our countries. That's why Sweden is thriving right now and other countries are not. But I digress. I'm sidetracking. Given the situation, it is essential to devise stronger and more efficiently organized international institutions. So he's calling for more globalization with functionaries who are appointed fairly by agreement among national governments and empowered to impose sanctions. He wants a global body that can impose sanctions and have power and authority over the United States of America, over Europe, over, you name it, over Greece, over Germany, over entire continents and countries. When we talk about the possibility of some form of world authority regulated by law, we need not necessarily think of a personal authority. Still, such an authority ought to at least promote more effective world organizations equipped with the power to provide for the global common good, the elimination, of course, of hunger and poverty, and the sure defiance of fundamental human rights. How could something like this come into existence? Well, the Pope could say, oh, look at this. We now have mass starvation and hunger because of COVID. Again, not because of COVID, but because of your tyrannical lockdowns, right? Let's use that to start world government, world peace, because we have to save the planet, because they're the ones who destroyed it and they're the ones who are offering the solution. See how that works? But this is why this encyclical letter is so important to the masses. This is their next game plan, folks. This is what they plan on doing in the future. This is the next step from the pandemic. And I've been warning about this ever since the start of pandemic. And so in the name of saving people from hunger and economic crisis that they caused, we need to rise up more global organizations and globalists. And who better to lead the way, according to the Pope, than the United Nations? Sounds like, something out of the book of Revelations, but section 173 states this. In this regard, in regards to the global organizations and whatnot, I would also note the need for the reform of the UN organization and likewise of economic institutions and international finance so that the concept of the family of nations can acquire real teeth. He wants to reform it to more of a globalized body, which you and I, by the way, have no say over these authoritarian powers. The very definition of authoritarian is someone ruling outside of we the people. We don't get a say, we don't get a pick, we don't get to talk. They get to elect their own. This is what this is, exactly what this is. Needless to say, this calls for clear legal limits to avoid power being co-opted by only a few countries, right? And to prevent cultural impositions or a restriction of these basic freedoms of weaker nations on the basis of ideological differences. In other words, he wants to create this body so not one country is more powerful than the other, or there's not a couple of powerful countries and a couple of weak countries. No, you see, instead, there is no one country in charge. It now becomes one body that's massive and all-powerful. Tell me how that's better. It's just not. Biblically speaking, it is literally hell on earth. Section 257 states, the Charter of the UN, when observed and applied with transparency and sincerity, is an obligatory reference, point of justice, and channel of peace. The Antichrist comes in the name of peace and safety and security. Here there can be no room for disguising false intentions or placing the partisan interest of one country or group above the global common good. So for the sake of the hive mentality, you need to wear your face mask. You need to get your vaccine. You need to accept the new world order and accept your curfew. Lock yourself in your home because we're saving the planet and we're saving humanity and we're saving people from the pandemic. You see, but he went on to expand in this encyclical letter how, well, capitalism is evil. Free market's evil. And how we need to promote and push global communism. Here's a couple articles on it that I thought were good. The Gateway Pundit. Communist Pope Red Francis issues radical edict condemning capitalism using St. Francis as his prop. BigLeaguePolitics.com. Pope Francis pushes globalist communism as solution for the COVID-19 pandemic. In latest letter, he is blaming capitalism for the negative impacts of the lockdown policies. It's not capitalism that did that to us, folks. It was these communist-style legislations. And Pope is twisting the truth here. He's saying that's because of capitalism. No, that's because they actually initiated communism in the United States of America that allowed these laws to pass. Let's call it what it is. But instead, he praises the enemy. Instead, he praises exactly what caused our birth. That's just nifty. Now, if you want to know exactly what he says about in this letter about capitalism, here's what he says, and I'm going to kind of go through this. I know I'm going a little longer than I thought, but section 168 reads, neoliberalism simply reproduces itself by resorting to the magic theories of spillover or trickle without using the name as the only solution for societal problems. In other words, capitalism, free market. There is little appreciation of the fact that the alleged spillover does not resolve the inequality that gives rise to new forms of violence threatening the fabric of society. It is imperative to have a proactive economic policy directed at promoting an economy that favors productive diversity and business creativity. No, socialism and communism do not make businesses thrive. In fact, they fall, right? But let's keep going. Small business especially. But it goes on and makes it possible for jobs to be created, not cut. Financial speculation fundamentally aimed at quick profit continues to wreak havoc. Indeed, without internal forms of solidarity and mutual trust, the market cannot completely fulfill its proper economic function. And today, this trust has ceased to exist. The story did not end the way it was meant to, and the dogmatic formula of prevailing economic theory proved not to be infallible. The fragility of the world system in the face of the pandemic has demonstrated that not everything can be resolved by market freedom. It has also shown that in addition to recovering the sound political life that is not subjected to dictates of finance, we must put human dignity back at the center and on that pillar build the alternative social structures we need. In other words, build the social structures of the United Nations, refuse to delegitimize them. You're not allowed to speak bad about them. That's in the letter too, by the way. But basically get rid of capitalism that has failed us. You see what it did as a result of the pandemic? No, I don't. I see a bunch of authoritarian technocrats, not the right word, but whatever, trying to take over our country. And I see a bunch of brainwashed sheeple. I'm so freaking tired of the sheeple. Walking around like we're saving lives. Look at me, I'm going to virtue signal. Look how good I am. That's what they're doing. I'm just going to be honest. Okay, I'm sidetracking. Anyhow, I love all of you. I want to encourage you. Please don't forget to check out my partner at noblegoldinvestments.com. Right now, they've got some amazing offers for you, and you can convert your 401k to a Roth IRA. And if you do that right now for any qualified IRA, you get that gold, 1/10 gold coin, the American Eagle, and that thing is simply amazing. Anyhow, I love all of you guys. Thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.